and let's get started now. So I'd like to welcome all of you to our Bayou Culture gathering for this October 28th. We're very excited to have Miss Elaine Clément with us and her team of folks that will be talking today about story circles and climate anxiety. I also like to thank all of the partners that are able to make this program possible, as well as the funders, the National Endowment for the Arts, Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities, and the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development. We thank you guys for your support. We also like to take a moment to spotlight one of the artists and tradition bearers who participate in the Passing It On workshops for the Louisiana Folklife program. And today we would like to spotlight Miss Sabina Miller for her wax crepe paper flowers. I had the good fortune of being able to participate in this workshop back in September, and it's really just a beautiful tradition that has been passed down through her family. It was interesting because before there were wax and silk flowers, these flowers were used in cemeteries, and so this was felt like with the celebration of All Souls Day coming up, but that was something nice to share with all of you today. So again, if you're just joining us, please introduce yourself in the chat. Also would like to give you sort of the format that's going to take place today. We have Miss Elaine Clément, who's going to be presenting. And then after that, we'll have a question and answer session. We'll ask Miss Elaine to share what her hope for the coast is, and then also invite all of you to share your hope for the coast in the chat. Ms. Maida Owens will give us an update on the position statement. We'll have a few announcements, and then we will move into our informal sharing period, which will last until 1:30 for anybody who'd like to stick around. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to all of you Miss Elaine Clément. She's a counseling instructor, activist for French and Creole language and culture, and a member of the Sustaining All Life Project. She'll also be joined today by Brooks Frederick, Bob Romero, Dennis Leffis, forgive me, Dennis Lefils, forgive me. Thank you very much, and Jolene Adams. I should have practiced the pronunciation. Clément, I had, but that's one I hadn't come across. So forgive me, Dennis. And so today, her and her team present a talk on story circles and climate anxiety. Elaine, thank you so very much for being with us, and thanks also to your team.
Oh, so delighted to be with all of you today. Hi. I'll introduce my team real quick. There's 5 of us. We are 5 Cajun heritage folks who have been meeting bi-weekly we just figured out, we're not sure if it's 14 or 15 years to do a listening exchange, and it's really made a difference in all of our lives. But if you raise your hands, Jolene Adam, or Adam, Dennis Lefis, who's actually lives in Florida, Bob Romero, who's in Houston, and Brooks Frederick, who lives in Brooklyn. We all have Louisiana. So take it away, Brooks.
Okay. Hey, y'all. It's so good to be with you. I'm here with the King Cake Babies. They say hi. Just wanted to do a little exercise that we often do to create a welcoming environment, and that is to please, in the chat, please type something that you love about the Louisiana coast, nature, and if you're not in Louisiana, I grew up in Byrd, but I'm not currently in Louisiana, so you can put wherever something that you love about nature from wherever you are currently living. And I'm going to try putting this in the chat.
Right.
Yeah. And you can do that anytime.
And And then we'll pass it on to Dennis, who we like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of Native people, stolen lands of Native people. And so Dennis is going to talk to us for a couple of minutes about land acknowledgement.
Hello. I'm glad to be with y'all today. One thing we wanted to do was to acknowledge the land and the people who lived here before us. Because the land we live on is part of who we are, and it reflects our history and also the history of those who have been here before. And to understand our history, we need to recognize that the indigenous people that have lived and continue to live on the land that we occupy. You know, part of that history is that Louisiana, as much of the world was colonized mostly by Europeans. And the colonialism led to the genocide, robbing of land, the separation and marginalization of indigenous people that happened here and also many places around the world. And we ask that just take a moment for us to honor the past and the present indigenous people and the land that we share with them.
Thanks, Denis. And we also invite you, if you don't know the Native peoples that live in your area or lived in your area, that it's an interesting and a loving thing to do to find out about where you live and the history. So hi, je suis Louisianaise. I'm a Louisiana woman. And we know about joie de vivre here. We know about the joy of life and celebrating. And we have lots of things to celebrate here in Louisiana. Our vibrant and diverse cultures, our music, our beliefs, our communities, our beloved and beautiful wetlands, our relationships, the courage and resiliency and creativity of our people, the possibilities that we are finding and will find more solutions to the climate crisis. And at the same time, our beloved Louisiana is under threat from hurricanes, water levels rising, subsidence, flooding, and drought, interestingly enough. Severe and unnatural weather events are happening around the world and affecting all of us, but mostly indigenous people and people of color and with less means. And we're all having a lot of feelings, of course, including grief and anxiety because of these events. And also because we're not necessarily in touch with the enormous efforts around the world to solve this crisis. It affects our relationships and our ability to think. C'est chez moi. This is my home. This is your home. It was where I was connected with my huge, loud, and extended family in Morgan City growing up, where I went fishing and crabbing together with my family as a child, where I could look out the front window of our house at times and see the swamps across the street. When I was growing up, my great-grandmother, God bless her, Sanal Marie Moise Berniard, she was a force. My mom's mom was the matriarch of the family. And I remember that whenever there was a crisis, the women in the family would band around each other, listen, and discuss how they would handle the situation. It was a strong message as a young girl and a powerful example. And I also got the message that I didn't get to take part in it. My family wanted their children to be good US children and live life a different way. We all come from traditional cultures. Some of those traditional cultures are still obviously in operation here. Others of us have a more distant connection. Our traditional culture embodies connection, a common language, bond with nature, a collectivity, and a sense of belonging. And another piece of these traditions is that people come together in different ways to listen to each other in times of crisis and find solutions, or to celebrate life. Assimilation, genocide, and the systematic mistreatment of our cultures have all eroded our traditional cultures. Many of us have lost contact with our traditional culture and perhaps learned not to reach for one another or even notice what's going on with nature. We can feel anxious, alone, and isolated at times. Given the circumstances, that is very understandable. What we are about here are listening exchanges. It's similar to what traditional cultures do. Gather people together to listen, think and decide together in times of crisis and celebration. When you're listened to, and when you're listened to well, you might find yourself having some feelings, crying, laughing, sweating. It's all part of what we do naturally as humans, and it can be a healing process. I just think about the times I've had a good cry and how much I feel better after I do that. Our experience is that when we allow ourselves to express emotions in a safe, supportive environment, like a listening exchange, we can think better and we feel less anxious. As I've already shared with you, our team here is a group of Cajun heritage folks that have been meeting for the past 14 years, bi-weekly as a listening exchange group. And this work together has changed all of our lives. You can ask any one of us. We'll have a few things to say. Sustaining All Life, we're all members of the team of Sustaining All Life, also known as SAL, is a global organization that allies with and supports individuals and organizations working to end the climate crisis. They're actually on their way to the COPs. They're taking 40-member delegation to COPs in Egypt right now. Our goal is to share these tools, these listening tools, to people to help address emotional barriers, which might get in the way of better addressing the climate crisis together. We base our work, SAL bases our work in the theory and practice of reevaluation counseling. The counseling term comes from the term peer counseling. So this is how it works. If we had more time, and we'll tell you about an event that we're doing in a couple of weeks, you would be invited to go into a breakout room with an experienced person and a few other people. This is peer counseling, so we split up the time equally. Each of you would have a chance to tell your story and how the climate crisis is affecting you. There's nothing you have to do except listen. We ask you to consider that the person you're listening to is an intelligent, powerful, loving, and creative human while you're listening. Consider the same thing for yourself while sharing. And to make this a safe place, we also request that these groups remain confidential, that you don't discuss what goes on in the group outside. What goes on in the group stays in the group. We use timers to be efficient and so that everyone gets heard. You may have some feelings during your time. That's completely natural. Just trust yourself. This is not about doing what somebody else is doing. This is about noticing what's going on with you. Crying or laughing or any of those human activities is not only natural, but healing. And then we would come back together at the end to share what that experience was like for you if you were interested. So now I'm going to invite Jolene Adam and Brooks Frederick, two Native Louisianians, to share their stories around climate change and their involvement with this process. Take it away, Jolene.
Merci, Sharon. So I'll tell you a little bit about my family, my connection to the environment, and go from there. So my family is from around Thibodaux, I grew up with two sisters, a mom who was a homemaker, and a dad who had left the cane fields for the oil fields and to build oil derricks. And I learned to love nature in my yard. We had this awesome yard. It was only about 1/4 of an acre, but there were a dozen full-grown trees on it, all kinds of trees, giant chicken trees that we would climb, and box cedars and pear trees, willows, sugarberries. And I remember the special times, like when my dad would bring us fishing and then come back and clean fish in the yard, or he would come home with a sack of oysters and sit on the back steps and shuck the oysters. With all those shade trees, we still had some sunny spots. We had a sunny corner, so we had a little garden. Oh, it was awesome. We had earthworms and doodlebugs, and we had a clamshell driveway. We would go out there and twirl our batons, and I learned to ride bicycles out there. So there were times growing up that didn't feel very stable. They were a little scary when I was a child, but it was my yard that kept me connected and where I felt safe. And so the trees and the sky and the clouds, the earth were just always there, always the same, and just kind of comforting. So I think it was when the day it really hit home, okay, this climate change is happening. It really is happening. Here it is one day just a couple years ago when I was driving and I looked up at the sky and the clouds were different. They were beautiful, but they were different. It was like looking at a science fiction sky. They were huge. The shapes were different. Never seen clouds like that before. And it just sort of gave me this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. And I felt alone with that feeling, and I felt anxious. But these listening exchanges that we do, that provides me a place where I can come and I can talk about it and tell my story and connect with other folks. And it's that connection that sort of contradicts that alone feeling, and then suddenly I don't feel as anxious through the process. And it's when I'm connected like that, I can think better. And so the decisions and the actions that I want to take in my life or for the climate, I feel like I make better decisions and I take action in a better way. So instead of feeling panicked and rushing out, or just kind of feeling the sense of duty and going forward that way, I'm actually going forward connected. And even having fun with my decisions and with the actions, even with the climate actions that I take on. So lately I've been communing with my ancestors a lot in here and looking around to other Cajuns and our allies to connect today. And I've been organizing for the past year or so. I've been organizing sing-alongs where we sing old traditional French songs together, and round dances where everyone holds hands, dances in a circle. And that goes back way to our peasant roots, all the way back in Europe. And so I love that because I feel like our peasant ancestors had strong communities and they did things together. And that's kind of how I want to go into this next chapter for our coast and for our planet, is just kind of holding hands and singing and dancing and, you know, doing what we need to do together. Bien, merci.
Merci, Jolene. Brooks, it's all yours.
Okay. Hey y'all again. Yeah, so good to be here. I didn't say what I loved about Louisiana coast. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, but I spent a lot of my time in Louisiana. Grew up in Berg. And I love my godchild. She's 13 and she's kind of in the midst of this struggle with her generation. And I was thinking about it. I love the smell of the swamp on a good day. So those are things that I love. I also, love the people that I get to know and get to stay in connection with, whether it was church youth groups or the band. Jonathan Forey and I were actually in the band together. Speaking of 13-year-olds, when we were both 13, and I found myself appreciating like the community that I grew up in. And but of course, like I'm sure everyone on this call, I've also had to evacuate for hurricanes. I remember staying in my father's office building for really bad hurricanes because it was a more sturdy building than our house. And I'm sure most of you, most of my family has had to move a little farther north in Terrebonne Parish, had cousins lose their homes in hurricanes, and of course the oil spill. And what Jolene and Elaine have alluded to, I have also experienced this profound sense of connection. Like Elaine said, we come from cultures that understand community, but there's something kind of beautiful about having a structured relationship in these listening circles where you take turns listening to each other. I don't know about you, but a lot of my friends, they're great, but we're not always the best listeners because we have a lot on our mind. So it's given me a space to tell my story and what's been hard about dealing with climate change, the anxiety that I feel, but also to not feel so isolated. So I think that's one of the hardest things, right? We can feel very alone. So I know when I come to this group, and I've been going for 10 years, and it's a place where I can just have whatever emotion I'm feeling that day. And what I've noticed is, like Jolene said, I feel a lot more effective in the world. I'm able to have more fun. I'm able to think more clearly about steps I want to take in my life, and that's just been a huge, huge, huge gift. We know a lot about support. We know about it culturally through the culture so many of us grew up in. And then in this organization, we understand some particular things about support. And, I may not get to see my godchild every day like I'd like to, or smell the swamp, but this keeps me coming back for sure. Maybe one last story I'll share is a practical application of this process is that, the BP oil spill hit so many of us really hard in our communities. And when that happened, Elaine and I took a car ride down to Cocodrie and Dulac, and with the specific intention of holding space for our emotions. So we had space to do all those human emotional release that we mentioned. And what I noticed is that after that experience, I felt so much less alone. I felt so much more connected, and not as much grief. Yeah. So I hope you join us. Bob and Elaine are going to tell you more about an event we're having on November 10th. I love my Louisiana family. I want to be and welcome any of you to come continue this or experience this work with us. All right. Merci.
Thanks, Brooks. Bob's going to tell you about the event.
Yes. So hi, everyone. Pivoting off of this wonderful opportunity that's been given us to tell you all about what we're about. We're going to have an event. We'll put on an event on, as you can see up here, November 3rd, Thursday, November 10th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. On processing climate grief and anxiety through our personal stories. And so it will give us a chance to demonstrate to you how we do this listening and give you an actual experience of doing it yourself. And we would love for you to come if you're interested, and also to invite anyone else you think might benefit from this experience. And so we look forward to seeing y'all. And I think we're gonna put this, we have a flyer that will go into the chat, and this same information. And so you have the link there to register. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Just to wrap up our presentation, I would very much like to thank Jonathan, Maida, and Mike, and the rest of the Bayou Cultural Collaborative team for working with us and inviting us to do this. And I want to thank all of you for coming, and thank my team. This has been great. We'd love to see you on the 10th.
Thank you so
And
much,
that's-
Elaine. Another thing that we like to do is ask our presenters what is their hope for the coast, because we know that without hope, there is no call to action. And so it's very important for us to identify those areas of hope. And I think that we have enough time to allow each one of your presenters, maybe 2 minutes, if you will, sharing what all of your hopes for the coast would be. So Elaine, can we start with you?
Sure. I think the coast may not end up like we would want it to end up, but I have a huge amount of confidence in nature from growing up in South Louisiana. It is trying to heal itself in whatever ways it can, and human nature and our connections in South Louisiana, we will figure it out. We will come together and figure it out. And so thanks.
Thank you for that. Jolene, would you like to share your hope for the coast?
Yes, right on with everything Elaine said. And I guess just thinking, coming back to our joie de vivre, that we know how to connect to each other and to the joy in life, no matter what, ultimately. And so that's my hope as well. So we will figure out what we need to do.
Thank you for that. Bob, what's your hope for the coast?
My hope is, the hope I have is based on the fact that how much people pull together when things get really tough. And I mean, that's been the case for a very long time. I was over here in Houston, and people, when we had Harvey, people came from Louisiana to help out, to rescue people. And so that's the spirit that I think will take us through very difficult times. It won't mean that it'll be easy, but that's what makes the difference, that we're willing to get together and pitch in and help out.
Thank you for that. And Dennis, what's your hope for the coast?
My hope is based mostly on the movement towards environmental justice. That, not just a select number of people get to survive and have good lives, but everyone deserves a chance at that. And the resilience, that people are resilient. And like after Ian hit, I watched the shots this guy had where he just waited for over a mile through the water to go get his mother and wrap her up and get her to safety. And, it's just like survival is a pretty strong instinct, and helping each other survive is right there. Okay.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And Brooks, what's your hope for the coast, bud?
Well, like everybody said, I believe in our people our brilliance, actually. You know, we might not always feel that way because of, I remember growing up in Louisiana thinking that I wasn't smart because I grew up in the South, but like, I know how brilliant we are, you know, and I know about our creativity and our ingenuity, but also I hope that we can have tough conversations and to kind of break this illusion of our separateness. I mean, I know politically it's gotten kind of nuts. And, you know, I want to figure out, I'm hoping to have more conversations with love. And I think that's one of the things I like about the SAL, Sustaining All Life approach, is that we don't believe that there is any inherent conflict between humans. You know, everything is all distress, and you know, we can do this together, and it's such a hopeful perspective. And I've learned a lot of it from Elaine and this group that I'm.
Thank you so much for that, Brooks. We appreciate you. All right, so moving on, we would like to hand the microphone over to Maida Owens, and she can give us all an update on the BCC position statement. Maida?
Yeah, I'm really delighted to say that we've had about 40 people vote so far, and it's all positive. We have no votes, but at the October 20th meeting to discuss it, we did have some issues come up that are definitely need to be addressed. And so we're going to have a draft 4, and we'll reach back out to people about approving it. There's one bullet that really needs to be clarified. But other than that, it's very positive feedback, and we hope to move forward with draft 4 soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. All right. So if you are interested in participating in any of the upcoming working group meetings, November 8th at 2 o'clock, we have a meeting with the French language immersion working group, and then also cultural and coastal planning, November 17th at 1 o'clock. And if you're interested in joining one of those, this is the contact information for the conveners. And if you're unable to get this information as we're going through the slides, you can always go to louisianafolklore.org to be able to get more information on how you can participate with this. But I'll just give a few more seconds if people are looking to jot down an email address. But again, you can go to louisianafolklore.org for that. Yes.
Just like to emphasize, well, a couple of things. One, the Louisiana French curriculum is kind of expanded now to include all indigenous and heritage languages in Louisiana. So if you have a particular interest in that. Two, the Louisiana French and the culture and coastal planning, those groups are really moving ahead with some work. So if you're interested in those issues, really reach out to the conveners, or you can always reach out to me at saundersbcc@gmail. The culture and coastal planning group in particular has transitioned, at least for the moment, to a learning model. And so they're inviting guest speakers in to address some of the issues they're looking at a little more specifically. So really, if you're interested in these groups or these issues, they're continuing to move ahead. So reach out to the conveners or me. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Michael, for that. We appreciate that a lot. All right. And then next, we'd like for you guys to save the date for our next gathering, which will be November 18th at 12 noon, as usual. And we will have Dr. Shauna Walton present to us Hunting, Harvesting, and the Art of Making Community. We thought that that would be very appropriate as we are approaching Thanksgiving. Makes a lot of sense for us to have her join us for that. So looking forward very much to that. If any of you would have any announcements that you would like to make, You can raise your hands virtually, and or you can post in the chat if there's anything that you would like to share with the group. Of course, you can also stick around because we're going to hang out and have an informal conversation until you guys are tired of listening to us talk. So here are some more ways to connect through the Louisiana Folklore Society at louisianafolklore.org. You can sign up for the different emails. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And of course, as Mike said earlier, that's his email down on the bottom there. And so,
Jonathan,
yes,
I'm
ma'am.
wondering if anybody has any questions for Elaine.
Oh, you know what? Forgive me, because that was a thing that we have skipped, which would make for the reason why we're at only 12:39 and at this moment. So Maida, thank you so much for bringing that out. And Elaine, forgive me. I was just looking for some hope so fast that I just ran straight into hope for the coast rather than allowing anyone to ask you any questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing to where we can go to the full screen again and we can see everyone's faces. And I would like to open this up to questions for Elaine and her team members. Please forgive me for jumping through that.
Good.
Thank you. So any questions for Elaine about the process that she and her team members have shared with us today?
I appreciate y'all's y'all's presentation. That was pretty neat. I was wondering if it sounds like this is probably a practice that's done by other people in other places. And do y'all communicate with those other groups? And if there's here, it sounds like, you know, you're connected by Louisiana. Are those other groups connected by other geographies, or is it more like something else, like other issues?
Sustaining all life is about climate change, and they've mostly, in fact, we were talking, I think this may be one of the first presentations that have been done outside of a climate conference. And yes, we're all connected in some way or another. You know, this is an international organization.
So today you talked about your group, that the people that are here. Do you have
Right.
another group on another day, and then another group on another day?
Yeah. I've been doing peer counseling for 30 years.
Yeah.
I have groups that I get together for different issues, you know, women's groups, and we do a lot of eliminating racism work. Yeah, different things.
Thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Gary.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to know more about the other groups. Like, are they, like, if let's say the time y'all are offering, y'all have your group, you know, with the Louisiana-based people. Yes, let's say I have a conflict with that time, and so I want to join another one. Are there others that are specifically Louisiana, or would I join one that could be people from all over the world or in certain parts? I'm fascinated by this opportunity.
Well, we're kind of holding off on telling people about some of the international stuff. Those are really cool because we're pretty cool too, we think. But yes, and it's, as far as these webinars kind of thing, it's there are going to be several offered during the next couple weeks, for a couple of 3 weeks, because of COPS, which is the I don't know what it stands for, but that's the Paris Accords came out of COPS, and they meet once a year, and they're in Egypt, Cairo. I think next week they start. But yeah, there are some possibilities.
Okay.
And if you come to our event on November 10th, we'll share it with you. Or Maida, I'll share it with you. Maida and I go
Way
back a ways.
Elaine likes to say that she did the same work as I did, but in French. And it's true. It's so true.
And if y'all insist on a webinar in French, I can do that too.
That would be cool.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Shauna.
Hi. So I appreciate this so much. I was so glad that you mentioned that you've been doing this peer counseling for 30 years, because I was thinking about the long history of story circles in civil rights work. And the first time I ever encountered story circles was with the great, some of y'all know him, the great John O'Neill, who's passed away, of course, now. And he was if you don't know him, he was the co-founder, he was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 1960s. And then he was the co-founder of the Southern Free Theater, and co-directed it for many, many years in New Orleans. And in New Orleans, he would run these story circles all the time. I don't know if you ever got to go to any of those, but that's what he did. That's how he did healing and reconciliation work, was through story circles. And so the Free Southern Theater would do a performance, and then they would have a story circle afterward. Or he would just go to a school and invite anybody in. It was very radical acceptance, like I'm just holding a story circle, y'all come, sort of thing. And
you know, something that's hit me from when I first started doing this, these listening exchanges, is how human it is. It's a little structured because obviously you want to give everybody some time, but it's all about being human. Being humans together, kind of thing. So yeah.
I guess what I was going to ask is part of your work built on or informed by that work from the 50s and 60s? That because they used to do that in the student they'd have these big story circles, and I was just wondering if y'all were connecting with that part of the history.
Well, reevaluation counseling has been around for about 70 years.
Okay.
And who knows? I mean, it's kind of hard to know what came from what, or you know, I know NCBI, which is National Coalition Building Institute, came out of reevaluation counseling. So yeah, I mean, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I can't tell you, I don't know, but I can tell you about my experiences for the most part, yeah. But it's very cool. Thanks for letting me know about the John O'Neill thing. That's really cool. Yeah, we do a lot of trying to look at the world as it is, and move our society toward a more rational, you know, listening to people, thinking about people and the nature. So yeah. Keep them coming, unless we did a really good job of answering all your questions.
One thing, if you can help to share, Elaine, or anybody from your team, I remember the first time I participated in one of these, and the folks who participate regularly are very comfortable with being very vulnerable. And when some people were talking and were very vulnerable, it made me very uncomfortable, because I am only that vulnerable with people I'm extremely close to and not strangers. But in this process, there's that confidentiality, which is nice it's like, I mean, honestly, I mean, I know it's peer-to-peer counseling, but it does allow for some healing to occur, even though it's not necessarily therapy, but I mean, but
yeah.
Can you share a little bit for some folks who may have never participated in what you guys are going to do on the 10th? Like, there are people laughing at horrible things, because as we're talking about that, it's a reaction because it's so horrible. You're like, my God, if I don't laugh, I'm gonna cry, and I think I'm gonna do both right now in front of everyone. So if you could just share some of that to let people understand what to expect.
Yeah, and I just want to underline something you said. Anytime somebody listens to you, it's great, but we are not therapy. We are not putting ourselves out there as therapists. We're putting ourselves out as listening experts, if you will. And one of the things that I've learned profoundly is not only do you learn to listen to other people, you start learning to listen to yourself. And there's so many ways in our particular society. Tell me where you can go and have your emotions, or you can, other than maybe laugh, but you can't laugh too loud, or you could maybe sniffle a little bit, except at Cajun weddings and funerals when everybody lets everything out. But so I think it's as much listening to other people as it is listening to yourself. And you start feeling things maybe you haven't felt ever or haven't felt in a long time, and they may make you uncomfortable. But it's a bit like, and I see Bob raised his hand, I'll get to you in a second, but it's a bit like building a relationship, even though other people may be sharing intimate things, because if you go into a group where they've been together for a little while, I mean, we've been together for 14 years. There's not a whole lot we don't share with each other, but, and it can be uncomfortable. And I understand that completely. And that's part of what you get to express. You get to go in there and say, I am as comfortable as all get out with this, what in the hell are y'all doing? But I think it's about, it's personal. It's like, what's happening with me and what am I feeling, and why am I not necessarily why I'm feeling, but what am I feeling? And can I express it however I need to express it, kind of thing. Does that answer? Bob has his hand up. I think he had something he wanted to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that when we put these listening circles together, our goal is to create safety. And Jonathan, you talked about that. So that's why we have confidentiality. People don't interrupt other people. We take turns, and you get to be listened to fully. And so it's the idea of safety, because I think we all can be vulnerable and reveal things when we feel safe. But another key piece is connection, that we try to set it up so that people feel safe, they know they're safe, and they can get connected. So yeah, it's really great if we have somebody we've known for years and we're close to, but even meeting people for the first time, if we can see their humanity and notice the connection, it really helps us. So you don't have to have 10 years of history with someone to be able to use the attention of another human to let your mind work and get through your feelings.
I was just going to add, when you come in to the listening exchange to tell your story, you're in charge of what you share or don't share, what you say or don't say. No one is going to grill you or ask you questions or pry anything out of you. It's all what you want to share when you come.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? And if there are no other questions for Elaine and her team, we're at a good point to move into our informal discussion. If anybody else has anything that they would like to share with the group, any announcements, questions, concerns, anything like that, the floor is open to all of you.